Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we will be recapping day one of the first round of the NHL 2020 playoffs. We've gone from 24 teams down to 16 teams, and we're really moving on to what is technically the real playoffs, considering we're calling this one round one. And what a way to start off these playoffs, this Lightning Blue Jackets game was absolutely insane to watch. I believe it ended up being the fifth longest game in NHL history, which is insane, as it went to 5 overtimes before we finally found a winner, which ended up being the Tampa Bay Lightning taking it 3-2 off of a Braden Point quintuple overtime goal. And this one started off, it was the Blue Jackets early, and that was probably a bit of a scare for Lightning fans. Obviously, with what happened last season, getting swept, they didn't want to relive a similar fate, but the Lightning showed a lot of fight in this game. They managed to tie it up with a Braden Point goal. It would eventually be put back the lead by the Blue Jackets with a Bjorkstrand goal before Gord early in the third period would tie up the game. And after that Gord goal, we would not have another goal for over 100 minutes before Braden Point's next one in quintuple overtime would end it. So just an absolutely insane game. You could really see from overtime 1 to overtime 5 this sort of drain of the energy here. There was a new save record set by Korpisalo. There was a new time on ice record set by Seth Jones. This game just basically had it all. And I liked what was a funny part here in the fifth overtime was that the Lightning really weren't getting much in terms of shots or anything in this fifth overtime, neither would the Blue Jackets, to be honest. And the Blue Jackets actually ended up getting called for a penalty. It was a delay of game. The Lightning went on the power play and didn't get credited with a single shot in that regard. And then on the shift that would eventually lead to this Braden Point goal in the overtime, it was funny just to see that a couple of these Lightning players just started to really just take shots and really hope for the best. Kucherov was sort of just swinging at them, and you could see the fatigue in the windup and in the execution of these shots. And they were, as I said, just sort of hoping for the best. And in the end, it actually ended up working out. I believe it was Braden Point who took this shot that hit off of Blue Jackets defenseman Gavrikov, who ended up sort of getting certainly stunned by the fact that the puck hit him very close to the face, if not the face, which allowed for the space for Braden Point to eventually follow up with this goal. So an unlucky situation for the Blue Jackets, but that's sort of how the games are always going to end when it goes this deep. Players are not necessarily all energized enough to really end the game skillfully, and so you're probably going to see one of these more lucky style of goals. Now, good news for the Tampa Bay Lightning is, of course, they sort of conquered their demons here. They're not going to get swept again by the Blue Jackets, and they showed a lot of fight in this game, which was something that we did not see at all from them in the series last season. So it's a really good start for the Tampa Bay Lightning, getting themselves on the correct track. Obviously, the bad news here is that they didn't really show themselves a consistent way of being able to beat Korpisalo. That was a problem with them last season against the Blue Jackets. They couldn't find a consistent way of beating Bobrovsky, and it seems like that could be a similar thing in this series. Obviously, 3 goals isn't terrible on Korpisalo, but considering the fact that they had, 8 periods, almost a full 8 periods to do so, and they put up 88 shots in this game, you'd probably expect to try and get more than 3 goals on 88 shots, but this was a great performance from Korpisalo, and it's something the Lightning are going to have to figure out as we move further on in the series. It was a problem for the Leafs in the previous series against the Blue Jackets, and the Lightning are going to try and avoid something like that from happening. The good news for the Blue Jackets is, of course, Korpisalo was absolutely insane in this game, which is a very, very good thing, as it seems as though Merzlikins, the goaltender who played a bit in the Leafs series previously, is injured for the foreseeable future, so it's obviously going to be Korpisalo all the way. And it's good to see not only that he played extremely well, but he also looked quite calm in nets. I felt like throughout the overtime he was really making it look easy, I guess you could say. And so it was an impressive performance from him. And also the Blue Jackets, even though they were outplayed pretty hard at times, especially in most of the overtimes. I think only the second overtime was one that was dominated by the Blue Jackets. Every single other one, it seemed they were on the back foot most of it. They kept this game close, obviously, and so that is something that is good to see for the Blue Jackets. It's something that was important for them in the series against the Leafs, and it's going to be something that's important for them in this series against the Lightning, because that's just how the Blue Jackets roll. The bad news for them is that doesn't seem like they're going to have that element of surprise against the Lightning. It doesn't seem they're going to have that super underdog situation here against the Lightning. The Lightning are prepared for what they're going to throw at them. And of course, with the Blue Jackets, it could end up setting in some fatigue here. They had the 5-game series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They had 2 overtimes in that series. Seth Jones was playing tons and tons of minutes. Now all of a sudden, a quintuple overtime game here in Game 1 against the Lightning. The Lightning had 3, not super serious round-robin games prior to this series. Meanwhile, the Blue Jackets have been really going at it. We'll see if that fatigue can be a problem, especially since some of these series are really getting some back-to-back games as the NHL really tries to squeeze these out. So we'll see if the Blue Jackets can actually keep up a consistent level of competitive performance. Now, because this game ended up running extremely long, the other game that was supposed to take place in the same arena, Boston, Carolina, actually got postponed until tomorrow, and as such, there were only 2 other games on the day. The first being the Stars versus the Flames. It would be the Flames end up winning 3-2. What was funny about this one is that it started 2.5 hours after the Lightning Blue Jackets game started, and yet it finished before the Lightning Blue Jackets game actually ended. So this one started off, it was a couple of Dylan Dubé goals to put the Flames up by 2, but then 2 goals in very quick succession by the Stars. Gurianov and Ben would tie it up. Eventually, a few minutes later, Rasmus Andersson would get the lead back for the Flames, and they'd end up winning it 3-2. So a solid game for the Flames as they take the 1-0 series lead. Good news for them. Cam Talbot continued to be quite solid for the Flames. It's nothing spectacular, but he's been very good. The Flames have been showing some consistent performance here, so all seems to be clicking rather well for the Flames. The bad news here is that this seems to be a much more competitive series. When it comes to the series against the Jets, besides in Game 2 where the Flames were just completely awful, the other 3 games were mostly just Calgary dominated the whole time. But in this series, the Stars are seemingly keeping it much closer, so we'll see how the Flames actually respond in that area, and it could be bad news, potentially, obviously. For the Stars, the good news is, of course, a similar thing. They kept this game quite close. They got a couple of goals, which was nice to see considering how poor their round robins actually went. And so we'll see if they can actually bring it back after this Game 1. The bad news for the Stars is probably their goaltending problems here. It's not really a problem per se in that they're really bad, but the problem is that they're choosing between 2 really strong goaltenders. Now, during the regular season, it was pretty clear that Ben Bishop was the starter, though both of these goaltenders, Ben Bishop and Anton Khudobin, sort of got a split of games, with Ben Bishop getting the slight majority of them. In this round robin, Ben Bishop was given a single game, he ended up losing that one, and Khudobin was given 2 games, and he managed to win a single one of those. And as such, Khudobin was given the first game here against the Flames, but he let in 3 goals. It was a loss, and so now the Stars are left with the question, do they go back to Ben Bishop, who was technically their starter during the regular season, or do they stick with Anton Khudobin? And while in the regular season, you can absolutely get away with playing 2 goaltenders for maybe half of the year. We saw the Islanders do it last season with Lehner and Greiss. We've seen the Stars do it for 2 seasons now, including this one with Bishop and Khudobin, of course. But usually in the playoffs, you want to ride with 1 goaltender. You want to keep that hot hand going. You want to keep that consistency going. And it was something the Stars actually did last season in the playoffs with Ben Bishop. He played I believe, every single game for the Stars until they were eliminated in Game 7 by the Blues in the second round. And so bouncing around between Khudobin and Bishop in this playoff series, not going to do them a lot of good. They need to come to a decision pretty quickly. And finally, the last game of the day was Golden Knights versus Blackhawks. It was a 4-1 Golden Knights victory. And honestly, it's hard to really take much out of this game. It was just sort of dominated by the Golden Knights. The good news for the Golden Knights is basically everything. Lehner looked quite solid. The offense was very good. The defense was very good. There just isn't really much to criticize here from the Golden Knights, honestly. They just played this one extremely well. I think that was one thing that was very important for the Golden Knights, is that they did not fall into the same trap that the Edmonton Oilers in the previous series the Blackhawks played did, which was sort of play the Blackhawks at their own game. The Golden Knights came out, they played a solid first period that ended up being scoreless, but they were keeping the Blackhawks off the board. They weren't allowing the Blackhawks to get some offensive chances like the Oilers managed to, or ended up doing so in the previous one. The Oilers sort of banked on the fact that they'd be able to able to outscore the Blackhawks. That didn't end up being the case. The Golden Knights learning from those mistakes and just playing an all-around perfect well, maybe not perfect, but an all-around extremely solid 60 minutes. And so there's not really any bad news for this team besides maybe the fact that they're going to face off against a Blackhawks team. They're probably going to be able to win this series rather handedly. Will they be prepared for the next round if they face off against a significantly better team than the Blackhawks? No offense to the Blackhawks, of course. That is up to question, but I feel like the Golden Knights will be strong enough, well coached enough, as Peter DeBoer, former Sharks head coach, is there, should be well coached enough to be able to come out quite well for the game one of a following series, if they are to win this one, which is likely to happen. The goal for the Blackhawks, I guess the good news would be that this game didn't go super awful. They weren't destroyed, blown out of the water. It was still sort of close at the very least on the scoreboard, but honestly, it's really hard to find much good news here for the Blackhawks. Their defense was okay, I guess. Crawford was decent, although a couple of these goals he probably would have liked to have back, especially that Smith one, the first Smith one, which was a backbreaker that made it 3-1 Golden Knights. That's not great. And the offense, well, there wasn't really much going for them. And also the fact that they could have been in that draft lottery, they could have had an opportunity at that first overall pick, and now they're sort of made it to this next round. They're falling down in the draft in terms of position, and they're probably not going to be able to win this series. So it's a rough life for the Blackhawks, though I'm sure Blackhawks fans would... Actually, I don't even know if that would be the case, but I'm sure Blackhawks players, at least, very least, would rather this extended playoff hockey, and maybe it'll be good for the Blackhawks experience. So maybe that's a bit of good news, is that some of these younger players on the Blackhawks, I believe they are the youngest team right now left in the playoffs. Maybe this could be good for some of their younger players to get some more experience and sort of experience what some of the older Chicago players like Kane, Taves, and Keith had experienced, a decade ago, let's just say. But that would do it for this recap. Only 3 games on the day, as I said, because of the postponed Carolina-Boston game, so there will be 5 tomorrow. In terms of predictions, I had the Lightning winning in 6 games. Winning this game 1 is a good start towards that. The second one, I had the Stars winning in 7 games, but the Flames getting the first one. Though with the fact that this game was quite close, I still have some faith in that Stars prediction. And then in the following one, I had the Golden Knights in 4 games, and unlike the sweep I predicted in the play-in rounds, which was Leafs in 3 that immediately was trashed after game 1, this Golden Knights one is actually looking like a pretty solid prediction. Class dismissed.